The velvet box was warm from my pocket when I set it on the counter, and the jeweler's hand froze halfway to touching it. "Ma'am." He didn't look up. His loop was already screwed into his eye socket, already angled at the watch on my wrist. My son's graduation gift to me. The one he'd slid onto my hand 3 weeks ago with both of his hands shaking. "Take it off. Now." I laughed. I actually laughed, because his voice had the exact pitch of a man watching a car roll toward a cliff. "Is something wrong with it?" He set down his loop. His fingers hovered over the clasp like it might bite him. "Ma'am, I need you to sit down before I tell you what's inside this." I didn't sit down. I don't sit down for anything anymore. Not after the year I'd had. My name is Diane Whitfield. I'm 61 years old, and for 34 of those years, I built something out of nothing. Whitfield Restoration Group, a commercial flooring and renovation company that started with me, a used van, and $4,200 I'd saved from a decade of waitressing double shifts. By the time my husband Tom passed 6 years ago, Whitfield Restoration Group was pulling in $6.8 million a year in contracts across 4 states. I didn't inherit it. I didn't marry into it. I built it board by board, contract by contract, at 5 a.m. job site walkthroughs in steel-toed boots while other women my age were retiring. I have one son, Bradley, 32 years old, my only child. The reason I never remarried, never slowed down, never once considered selling the company when 3 different buyers came knocking with 8-figure offers. I turned every one of them down because I wanted Bradley to have this. All of it. 2 years ago, I brought him in as Chief Operating Officer at a salary of $190,000 a year, plus what I thought was a modest, reasonable path toward eventually inheriting the company I'd spent my entire adult life building. I trusted him with the books. I trusted him with client relationships. I trusted him 8 months ago when he married a woman named Chelsea, a woman I'd met exactly 4 times before the wedding, a woman who called me Mother Whitfield in a voice like she was trying out a costume. I trusted my son with everything. That trust is the thing this story is about. And how carefully, how patiently, I learned to take it back. It was a Tuesday in March when I walked into my own conference room 40 minutes early for a client presentation and found Chelsea sitting in my chair. Not near my chair. In it. Feet up on the edge of my mahogany table in $400 heels, a company laptop open in front of her, a to-go cup of something clearly not coffee sweating a ring onto my quarterly reports. "Oh," she said, not moving. "Didn't think you came in before 9 anymore." I'd come in before 6 every day for 3 decades. She knew that. She said it anyway, testing the air like a kid checking if a door is really locked. Bradley walked in behind me a moment later, tie loose, laughing at something on his phone, and when he saw me, his face didn't do what a son's face should do. It didn't light up. It flickered, the exact look of a man recalculating. "Mom, you're early." "I'm on time," I said. "Whose chair is that?" Chelsea finally swung her feet down. "We were just going over some numbers before your thing." "Your thing?" "My presentation. For the $14 million Hartwell medical contract I'd spent 5 months courting, was your thing." I smiled. I said nothing else. But I noticed, because 34 years of reading job sites and reading people had taught me to notice, that the laptop open in front of her wasn't showing the Hartwell numbers. It was showing our payroll system. I told our IT contractor, Marcus, that I wanted a routine security audit of the finance system. Nothing alarming. Just Diane being cautious, the way I'd always been. What came back 3 days later stopped me cold in my kitchen at 11 p.m., reading glasses fogged from the steam of a tea I never drank. Chelsea Whitfield, who held no title, no employment contract, no login credentials I had ever authorized, had accessed our payroll and vendor payment system 41 times in the past 5 months. I confronted Bradley over dinner, keeping my voice as flat as a countertop. "Why does Chelsea have access to payroll?" He didn't even blink. "She's been helping me streamline vendor processing. Cross-functional efficiency stuff. Honestly, Mom, it's a workflow optimization thing. You wouldn't really get into the weeds of it, but we're integrating a new reconciliation protocol, and she's got a finance background." Chelsea had a background in Instagram marketing for a boutique in Scottsdale. I knew this because I'd looked her up the week of the engagement. I nodded slowly. That makes sense, I said. Efficiency's important. I believed nothing. I filed it away. 2 weeks later, I pulled our vendor payment history myself, quietly, on a Sunday when the office was empty except for me and the hum of the server room. A new vendor had appeared 11 months prior. Whitfield Logistics Solutions, LLC. Monthly invoices ranging from $8,400 to $22,000 for supply chain consulting and material sourcing. I'd never heard of them. I'd never approved them. And the name was close enough to my own company's that anyone glancing at a ledger would assume it was ours. The registered agent address, when I looked it up on the state business filing site at midnight, was Bradley and Chelsea's condo. I asked Bradley about Whitfield Logistics Solutions over coffee, keeping my tone light, curious, the tone of a mother who barely understood spreadsheets. Oh, that's a shell. I mean, that's a subsidiary structure, he said, and I watched him build the lie in real time, brick by confident brick. For tax efficiency and liability shielding on the material sourcing side. Dad's old accountant actually recommended something like this years ago. It lets us depreciate assets more favorably and insulate the parent company from vendor liability exposure. Dad's old accountant had died 4 years before Bradley ever mentioned this structure. Smart, I said. You always were good with numbers. I went home and cried exactly once, for exactly 6 minutes, standing in Tom's old study. Then I stopped. I came back to the office one evening for a forgotten folder and heard them before I saw them. Voices carrying down the empty hallway from the break room. She has no idea, Chelsea was saying, laughing. She still thinks a spreadsheet is cutting-edge technology. My God, did you see her face when I said reconciliation protocol? She just nodded like a bobblehead. She's slowing down, Bradley said. Honestly, I think once she sees the Q3 numbers dip, she'll finally agree to step back into an advisory role. He made air quotes I could hear in his voice. Which, let's be real, means retire. We just need 6 more months of the logistics thing running clean, and then we restructure her out of day-to-day completely. Restructure her out. I stood in that hallway in my flat work shoes, 61 years old, and felt something in my chest go very, very quiet. Not sad quiet. Still quiet. The kind of stillness right before you drive the first nail. I hired a forensic accountant, a woman named Priya Anand who came recommended by my old lawyer with the phrase, she finds things people bury on purpose. It took her 19 days. The real number wasn't $8,400 to $22,000 a month. Over 11 months, Whitfield Logistics Solutions LLC had billed my company $612,000 for services that did not exist. No supplies, no sourcing, no consulting, just invoices, approvals Bradley signed himself using his COO authority, and a bank account that fed directly into Bradley and Chelsea's joint checking. They weren't planning to inherit my company. They were already draining it. And they were planning to push me out before I noticed the hole. I made a decision that night, sitting across from Priya's report with a cup of coffee gone cold. I was going to become exactly the woman they already thought I was. Slow, confused, behind on technology, grateful for their help. The next morning, I started forgetting things on purpose. Small things. I asked Bradley to explain the cloud to me again, twice, in the same week, watching him sigh with the patient condescension of a man explaining gravity to a golden retriever. I started wearing my reading glasses on a chain around my neck, even when I didn't need them, patting my pockets for them theatrically in meetings, letting my voice go soft and a little wandering. Now, where were we? I lose the thread sometimes these days. I let Chelsea help me set my email signature. I let her reorganize my desktop folders, while Priya and I quietly mirrored every file she touched onto a drive she never saw. I told Bradley, over a dinner I paid for, that I'd been thinking about what he said, about stepping back. Maybe you're right, honey. Maybe I've been slowing down. I watched relief cross his face like sunlight. Inside, I was doing math faster than I'd ever done math in my life. Every account number, every date, every lie, stacked and cross-referenced, waiting. They thought they'd won. That was the whole point. I set the bait on a Thursday. I told Bradley I wanted to simplify things before I fully stepped back, and asked him to walk me through signing a new operating agreement, one that would formally transfer day-to-day banking authority to him, effective immediately, just to make the transition easier on everyone. It was, of course, the exact document that would let him legally finish what Whitfield Logistics Solutions had started illegally. I told him I wanted to sign it at family dinner, somewhere comfortable, not the cold office, at his condo, this Saturday. I said I wanted it to feel like a celebration, not a funeral. I even suggested he invite his in-laws, Chelsea's parents, who I'd learned had put $40,000 into Whitfield Logistics themselves as an investment opportunity Chelsea had pitched them. I wanted everyone in the room. What Bradley didn't know was that Priya's report was now sitting, notarized in triplicate, in my lawyer's office. What he didn't know was that I'd spent 2 weeks working with a retired detective named Ruiz, a friend of Tom's, who wired a small recorder into my cardigan and briefed 2 uniformed officers to be parked, unmarked, 1 block from Bradley's condo, at 7:45 p.m. Saturday. What Bradley didn't know was that my phone, sitting innocently in my purse under the dinner table, was live-streaming audio to Ruiz's car the entire evening. I sat in my kitchen Friday night, watching the phone's little green recording light blink under the table lamp, and felt my pulse in my throat like a countdown. Saturday came in wearing rain. Chelsea's laugh, she still thinks a spreadsheet is cutting-edge technology, filled the dining room in her own recorded voice. Bradley's, restructure her out of day-to-day completely, followed it. I watched my son's face do something I will remember until I die. The exact color drain out of it, like a drain unplugging under his skin. That's, Mom, that's taken out of context, that's $612,000. I said, quietly, not raising my voice, not once, the way I'd learned never to. That's what Whitfield Logistics Solutions billed my company in 11 months for services that were never performed. Signed off by you, Bradley. Wired into an account you share with your wife. Chelsea's mother's wine glass paused halfway to her mouth. Your $40,000 investment, I said to her gently, went into that same account. I'm very sorry. You were lied to as well. I picked up the operating agreement, the document meant to hand them the rest of my company, and I tore it once, cleanly, down the middle, and set the 2 halves on either side of Bradley's untouched wine glass. Headlights swept the front window. 2 knocks at the door, firm and unhurried. That'll be for Bradley, I said, and stood up from the table for the last time as a guest in his home. Bradley was charged with felony embezzlement and wire fraud 3 weeks later. With Priya's documentation and the recording as corroborating evidence, prosecutors offered a plea deal requiring $612,000 in restitution and 18 months of supervised probation, with a felony record that ended, permanently, any future in corporate finance. Chelsea was named as a co-conspirator on the Shell LLC. She avoided criminal charges through a cooperation agreement, but was named in the civil suit I filed, which resulted in the forced liquidation of the condo, the car, and, with what I'll admit was a small, petty satisfaction, the return of an engagement ring her own mother had actually paid for. Chelsea's parents, once they understood how thoroughly they'd been used, quietly settled their own separate small claims action against their daughter and, last I heard, no longer speak to her. Bradley was removed as COO the following Monday, his access badge deactivated before he'd finished his morning coffee. The one thing I made sure of, before any of it became public, every single one of the 40 employees at Whitfield Restoration Group received a letter from me personally, guaranteeing their jobs, their benefits, and a $2,000 stability bonus, because none of them had done a single thing wrong, and I refused to let my son's greed cost a single crew member their mortgage payment. It was late November, 6 weeks after the trial, when the doorbell rang during a hard, sideways rain. Bradley stood on my porch in a coat too thin for the weather, thinner himself than I'd ever seen him, hair plastered down, no umbrella. Mom, please. I have nowhere else to go. I stood in the doorway I'd walked through for 30 years, warm light behind me, rain soaking my son in front of me, and I felt the ghost of every 5 a.m. job site walkthrough I'd ever done for him. I built something for you to inherit, Bradley, I said, quietly, the way I always spoke now. You decided to steal it instead. Those aren't the same thing, and I won't confuse them for you again. Mom, I hope you rebuild something of your own someday, I said. Honestly, I do. But it won't be built on mine. I closed the door. Gently. No slam. I didn't need one anymore. Later, in the kitchen, my longtime partner Walt, who'd stood beside me through every deposition, every sleepless week, wrapped his arms around me from behind while I stood at the sink. You okay? I built a company out of $4,200 and a used van, I said. I think I can survive one closed door. He kissed the top of my head. Damn right you can. Here's what 34 years and one betrayal taught me. Love your children with everything you have, but never confuse love with blindness. The people who respect you will never need you to be foolish to feel comfortable around you. And the ones who do need that, they were never protecting you. They were managing you. Trust should be earned continuously, not handed over once and defended forever out of guilt. If someone in your life has ever told you to take it off, a ring, a title, a piece of your own worth, before you understood why, I want to know in the comments. Did you listen or did you dig in? If this story hit home, hit like, subscribe for more, and tell me below what you would have done in that dining room.